In the annals of American crime, few names evoke as much chilling dread as Gary Ridgway, infamously known as the Green River Killer. His reign of terror cast a long, dark shadow over King County, Washington, for nearly 2 decades, cementing his legacy as one of the nation's most prolific serial murderers. Ridgway, a seemingly ordinary truck painter, was responsible for the deaths of at least 49 women, though he chillingly confessed to many more, leaving a trail of devastation that continues to haunt the Pacific Northwest. His crimes, unfolding primarily between 1982 and 1998, saw vulnerable women, often sex workers or runaways, vanish from the streets, their lives extinguished with brutal efficiency. The bodies, meticulously hidden, frequently reappeared along the banks of the Green River and in secluded wooded areas, giving the killer his notorious moniker. His motives, though complex, centered on sexual gratification and a perverse desire to exert ultimate control over those he perceived as disposable, a grim testament to the darkest corners of human depravity. The story of Gary Ridgway begins long before his spree of murders brought him infamy. Born in Salt Lake City, Utah in 1949, Ridgway's early life presented a veneer of normalcy that belied the profound psychological disturbances simmering beneath the surface. He was a quiet, unassuming man, often described by acquaintances as withdrawn and unremarkable. Yet even in his youth, there were troubling signs. Reports of animal cruelty and disturbing sexual behaviors emerged, hinting at a nascent pathology. He served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam War, and upon his return, he settled into a stable job as a truck painter for Kenworth in Renton, Washington, a position he held for over 3 decades. This seemingly mundane existence allowed him to blend seamlessly into society, a critical factor in his ability to evade capture for so long. The Green River area itself provided a tragic backdrop for Ridgway's crimes. Known for its transient population and numerous truck stops, it was a place where vulnerable individuals, particularly young women struggling with addiction or homelessness, often found themselves. These were the women Ridgway targeted, understanding that their disappearances might not be immediately reported or thoroughly investigated. The early 1980s saw a disturbing pattern emerge. Young women vanishing, only for their bodies to be discovered months later, often in advanced states of decomposition, making identification and forensic analysis incredibly challenging. Public fear escalated dramatically as the disappearances mounted, creating an atmosphere of pervasive anxiety across King County. In response to the growing crisis, the Green River Task Force was officially formed in 1984, bringing together a dedicated team of investigators from various agencies. The pressure to solve these cases was immense, fueled by public outcry and the sheer volume of victims. However, the task force faced formidable challenges. Forensic technology in the early 1980s was primitive compared to today's standards. DNA analysis, which would later prove crucial, was still in its infancy. Investigators were also inundated with misleading leads, false confessions, and a lack of concrete evidence, making it exceptionally difficult to distinguish the signal from the noise. The sheer scale of the investigation, combined with the killer's meticulous methods of body disposal, meant that progress was agonizingly slow, and the killer continued his horrific work, largely unimpeded. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Gary Ridgway's modus operandi was chillingly consistent, a pattern of predation designed to minimize risk and maximize his perverse gratification. He specifically targeted vulnerable women, primarily sex workers and runaways, understanding that their marginalized status often meant they operated outside traditional social support networks. This made them less likely to be reported missing immediately, affording Ridgway crucial time to dispose of bodies and evade detection. His preferred method of murder was strangulation, a hands-on, intimate act that offered him a profound sense of control over his victims. After the murders, he would transport the bodies to secluded, wooded areas, often near the Green River, meticulously concealing them under brush or debris to delay their discovery. This practice was not merely about hiding evidence. It allowed him to return to these sites for further sexual acts, a horrific manifestation of necrophilia that underscored the depth of his depravity. Ridgway's ability to blend seamlessly into society, maintaining a stable job and outwardly normal life, was a key factor in his prolonged evasion. He frequently interacted with law enforcement in various capacities, including being questioned as a person of interest, yet his unassuming demeanor and lack of a criminal record allowed him to escape suspicion repeatedly. The investigation into the Green River murders was protracted and arduous, marked by both frustration and flashes of hope. In the early years, investigators struggled immensely to identify the killer. The sheer number of victims and the lack of advanced forensic tools made progress agonizingly slow. Detective Dave Reichert, a central figure in the Green River Task Force, dedicated years of his life to the case, becoming deeply invested in bringing justice to the victims and their families. Reichert and his team pursued countless leads, interviewed hundreds of potential suspects, and painstakingly pieced together fragmented evidence, often working with limited resources and under immense public scrutiny. The absence of a clear profile, coupled with the killer's careful disposal methods, created an almost insurmountable challenge. A turning point in the investigation came with the advent and refinement of DNA technology in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Crucially, investigators had collected biological samples from several crime scenes years prior, meticulously preserving them even when their significance wasn't fully understood. These samples, some dating back to the early 1980s, became the linchpin. In 2001, advancements in DNA profiling allowed forensic scientists to re-examine evidence previously deemed inconclusive. The results were staggering. DNA extracted from semen found on multiple victims, including Wendy Lee Caulfield and Marcia Chapman, definitively linked Gary Ridgway to the murders. This monumental breakthrough, after decades of relentless investigation, led to his arrest in November 2001. The news sent shockwaves through King County, bringing a sense of both relief and disbelief that the unassuming truck painter had been the elusive Green River killer. Following his arrest, Gary Ridgway faced the prospect of the death penalty. To avoid execution, he entered into an extensive plea bargain with prosecutors. In exchange for his life, Ridgway agreed to confess to all the murders he committed and to lead authorities to the remains of missing victims. This agreement, while controversial, was deemed necessary by law enforcement and victims' families alike, desperate for closure and the recovery of their loved ones. During his confession, Ridgway provided chilling details, recounting his methods, motivations, and the locations of numerous hidden bodies. His testimony offered a horrifying glimpse into his thought process, revealing a calculating predator devoid of remorse. He described how he would stalk his victims, lure them into his vehicle, and then strangle them, often near the Green River. He admitted to returning to the disposal sites, sometimes multiple times, to engage in necrophilic acts, further desecrating the victims. The emotional impact of his testimony on the victims' families was profound. While the confessions brought some answers, they also reopened old wounds and forced families to confront the horrific realities of their loved ones' final moments. The plea bargain itself sparked intense debate. Many believed Ridgway deserved the death penalty for his unspeakable crimes, while others recognized the value of recovering missing remains and gaining a fuller understanding of the killer's actions. The decision to spare his life was a pragmatic one, driven by the desire for closure for the families and the imperative to account for as many victims as possible. The profiles of Ridgway's victims paint a tragic picture of vulnerability and lost potential. Women like Rebecca Marrero, whose remains were among those Ridgway helped locate, were often young, struggling with addiction or caught in cycles of poverty. Cynthia Hines, Ophelia Lacey, and countless others were not just statistics. They were daughters, sisters, and friends whose lives were brutally cut short. Their stories, though often overshadowed by the killer's notoriety, represent the profound human cost of Ridgway's rampage. The long-lasting grief and uncertainty faced by their families were immense, with many enduring decades without knowing the fate of their loved ones. The tireless efforts of victim advocates and the families themselves played a crucial role in keeping the case alive, ensuring that the missing were not forgotten. The pervasive fear instilled in the Seattle area during Gary Ridgway's active years was profound, fundamentally altering the fabric of daily life for many. A palpable sense of dread permeated communities, particularly among vulnerable populations and their families. This era led to significant changes in public safety awareness and strategies, with increased vigilance, community watch programs, and a heightened public discourse around personal safety. The lasting psychological scars on the community were deep, manifesting as distrust, anxiety, and a collective trauma that persisted long after Ridgway's capture. The Green River Killer case also significantly impacted perceptions of serial killers and their motivations, forcing a re-evaluation of how such predators could operate undetected for so long within seemingly normal society. Media coverage, while essential for informing the public, often intensified this fear, shaping public understanding and sometimes fueling panic with sensationalized headlines and detailed accounts of the atrocities. In the legal aftermath, Gary Ridgway was sentenced to 48 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. He remains imprisoned, reportedly exhibiting a chilling lack of remorse for his actions. The plea bargain he struck, exchanging information for his life, set a complex legal precedent. While controversial, it highlighted the difficult balance between punitive justice and the desire for closure for victims' families, particularly regarding the recovery of remains. This strategy has since been debated in other high-profile cases. Despite his sentencing, efforts continue to identify additional victims through cold case reviews and advancements in forensic techniques. Law enforcement agencies in the region periodically revisit evidence, hoping to link Ridgway to other unsolved disappearances or murders, as his confessions often indicated a higher victim count than officially attributed. The enduring question of how Ridgway evaded capture for so long remains a central point of discussion. His ability to blend into society, his calculated targeting of marginalized individuals, and the limitations of early forensic science all contributed to his decades-long reign of terror. The case fuels the ongoing debate over nature versus nurture in understanding his pathology, prompting experts to examine the interplay of psychological predispositions and environmental factors that could have shaped such a destructive individual. The potential for more undiscovered victims is a haunting possibility. As Ridgway himself suggested, he killed many more than he was charged with. This uncertainty means the ongoing search for closure for families of women still missing continues, a perpetual ache for answers that may never fully arrive. The broader implications for understanding and preventing serial violence are significant, pushing criminologists and law enforcement to refine their profiles and intervention strategies. Gary Ridgway's place in criminal history is cemented as one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty. His case provided enduring lessons for law enforcement, emphasizing the critical importance of meticulous evidence collection, interagency cooperation, and the strategic deployment of evolving forensic science. For victim advocacy, the Green River Killer case underscored the necessity of supporting marginalized communities and ensuring that every missing person, regardless of their background, receives equal attention and resources. The importance of remembering the victims and their stories remains paramount, ensuring that their lives are not merely reduced to statistics in a killer's ledger. The continuous evolution of criminal profiling and investigative techniques, driven in part by the challenges posed by Ridgway's evasion, reflects a persistent commitment to preventing future tragedies and bringing perpetrators of such heinous crimes to justice. The shadow of the Green River Killer serves as a somber benchmark against which future investigations are measured, a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice in the face of unimaginable horror.